Well, hello everyone. Welcome. This is our Wednesdays weekly training, and I am so excited to be with all of you. There are so many of you who have shared with me that you really are enjoying this, both on the podcast and you love coming to these lives. So I want to thank you for those of you who continue to show up, continue to listen. It means so much to me. For those of you who don't know me, I am Marna Thal. I am the owner of thinwithin.com, and I've been helping people for the last 24 years lose weight by learning how to think thin, eat thin, and transform their mindset from the inside out. And so today I want to talk to you about how do you start to find more consistency to reach your weight loss, body, and health goals. How do you do this? Because I see this all the time. I see so many of you struggling like crazy to find more consistency with your weight loss. So many of you really struggling. It's like you want to lose weight on one hand, and you start taking those actions, and you see yourself doing some great work for 3-4 days. You feel motivated, you feel excited, you're pumped up, you're even seeing the weight start to go down, and then all of a sudden something happens in your consistency. Something pops you out of the consistency and the headway that you were making, so that you then start to see the weight pop back up, and that frustrates you, and you keep going in this up-down cycle. Now listen, weight loss is an up-down. There's a little bit of up and a little bit of down. That's totally normal. But if you feel like you just keep struggling at the same weight up and down, and you are not making headway, this is really going to help you today, because consistency is one of the biggest obstacles to weight loss. And finding some consistency, finding some tools that you can use to help your body slim down, to help your body be more consistent so you can reach your weight loss goals, is what this episode is all about. It's what this training today is absolutely all about. Okay? So I want to make sure that you are not falling into this trap where I've watched so many of my inner circle members, so many of my clients do this, where they feel so inspired, feel so excited, feel ready to take on their weight loss, and they start seeing great results. And then all of a sudden, somebody asks them to go out to eat. And then they go out to eat. And then somebody else has a party that they want to go to with their friends, or there's a block party happening and you want to just sit back with your neighbors and sip some wine, and you're like, oh man, that totally took me out of the consistent role that I was playing with food, the consistency that I was seeing with my weight loss, the consistency in the planning that I had, or I take charge around. And so I want you to look at consistency like an ocean. And we're going to just create this ocean, and it has some bumps in it, and it has a little bit of waves, but we're going to just stay holding tight to those waves to make sure that you stay on the path, so that you don't let yourself go under the water. You stay afloat and you keep going. And we're going to do that because there's some real skill in crafting some consistency in your weight, in your body, in your life. And so I want to tell you about one study that I read where Andrew Deutscher, he is he's part of what's called the Energy Project, which is a performance improvement consulting group. And he really looked at consistency, and he said, you know what? Your brain actually craves it. Your brain actually craves consistency. But what happens with consistency? What does our brain also think about consistency? What do you think? Our brain also thinks it's boring. It thinks consistency is humdrum, a little boring. Oh, It's same old. It doesn't want to do the same old, because when it does the same old, it's not exciting. And so it looks for an exciting new restaurant. It looks to have some changes to give you that increase of that good feeling hormone, where you go, ooh, I feel good. Now I'm changing things up. Things are happening a little bit differently. So consistency can be boring. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like, yeah, I'm doing this diet program, I'm eating this way, and it's so boring. Yes, I'm seeing the results, but this is so boring. So what do we do with that desire for excitement and the desire to lose weight and the need for consistency? How do we deal with these two things, these opposing forces? Well, we start to merge them together, and we're going to look at how do we merge these together so that you can have this desire, this need for consistency to create weight loss, and yet the excitement for your desire for excitement and having those both work together. So we're going to do that today by looking at 3 things that need to happen in order to build in consistency and be aware of your brain's dopamine desire for feeling excitement. Okay. All right. And I just want to say hi to everybody. Hello, everybody joining me. I love seeing you here. Hi, Paula. Hi, Barbara. Nice to see all of you joining in live, over the phone, calling in. Love seeing y'all. So thank you for being here. So let's look at what we've learned from the brain and from creating from a perspective of creating more consistency. So the first thing that I want all of you to do when we're looking at consistency is to have a solid base. Here's what I mean by that. I want you to have a solid base before we start shaking things up. So if you're practicing eating when you're hungry, if you're practicing honoring your body, if you're practicing avoiding late night eating, we got to give you a base. We got to give you a couple weeks of having some consistent behavior there with that. So we got to build in that into the strategy. So we want to have at least 8 to 12 days of having some consistency, because then you start to really, see the results. And when you see results on the scale, it gets a little bit exciting. It gets fun to see that. But then the next thing, once you've established a base and you've really taken the time to create a new consistent habit around an area that you're frustrated with, maybe like late night eating, once you have a couple weeks under your belt, then we want to add the wiggle room. Then we want to bring in a smidge of wiggle. So what would that look like? So if, let's say, you're practicing avoiding eating late at night, you tell yourself kitchen is closed at 8 p.m. Then after a couple weeks, after giving yourself that base, then we want to bring in some wiggle. Then we want to you can even plan for it and go, okay, 2 weeks in, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to have some ice cream after dinner. I'm going to go out late at night and go walk to the store and grab something, right? So that's when you can then start bringing in. Why? Because we already have a consistent baseline. Then we're bringing in the element of wiggle room to add to that. And then the next day, so let's say day 14, you go have some ice cream late at night. Day 15, you go back to kitchen closed at 8 o'clock. Okay? So when you go back to the habit that you're creating, your brain's like, oh, great, once in a while, this is cool. But I am somebody who now has the kitchen closed at 8 o'clock. The third piece is that last piece around bringing in the identity. When you start to create an identity around the consistent behavior that you want to create, it makes it so much easier. So when you choose to be somebody who no longer eats after 8 o'clock, that's an identity piece. That's a piece of your identity. You're saying, I'm somebody who does this. I'm somebody who no longer eats past 8 o'clock. And that feels amazing. And most of the time, I really stick to that. And once in a while, I don't. We bring in that element of variability, of option, of it looks mostly like this, but sometimes I do this. So I don't want any of you having things so tightly wound in your life, like I have to do this, I must do this. And sometimes I see that happening. You're getting you start a diet and you are it's so hard to follow that you quickly give up. It's just too hard. It doesn't fit into your life. It is not doable. So it's important for whatever it is that you want to be consistent around, that it be doable. That it be doable for your life, that it's doable for your mind, and it fits into what it is that you want to do versus making it so hard that it's like climbing up a mountain. Now, remember, you can always change things up. You can always change what doable is, but you start with what is doable now, right in this moment. Okay? And then you build the consistency from the doability, from it fitting into your life. When you then have some consistency for about 2 weeks, then you add the variability. Then you kind of you add a little wiggle room. You go, okay, let's go have some ice cream tonight. You don't make yourself wrong. You don't tell yourself there's anything wrong with it. You celebrate it. Great. I can sometimes have some variability, which is great. I want you having that. And then the next night you go back to kitchen close at 8 o'clock or whatever it is that you have as your goal of being consistent around. And then once you do that, then you stay consistent and then you bring in a little wiggle room. Then you stay consistent and build in a little wiggle room. And what happens is the more consistent you are, the more your brain goes, oh, this is just who I am and this is what I do. And it goes back to your unconscious mind. You then start to do this on autopilot. It's not anything you have to think about. And then that's the time to bring in a new strategy that you would like to make consistent. And then you just take action and rinse and repeat. And you do it over and over. Okay? So let me repeat this and then I'll answer any questions. Feel free in the chat to ask me any questions you have about this or anything else, okay? So it works like this. You decide where you want to be consistent. And you look at your life and you look and see is it doable? Is what I want to be consistent with actually doable or not? Then once you start making this practice doable, you do it. You create a base for yourself. You do it consistently for ideally 14 days, 2 weeks. On that 14th day or 15th day, then add a little variation to it. Change it up a little bit. Don't make yourself wrong. Don't make yourself bad. You're just going to add a little variation so that we're adding a little bit of your brain's desire for excitement, a little bit of and also for you to see that you can wiggle out of this pattern and you'll be okay. And then the next day, go back to what you were doing before without guilt, without shame of the previous day. And you keep going that way. Consistent, 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 variable. Consistent, 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 variable. Consistent, consistent, okay? And then when that feels like I've got it dialed in, I stop eating at 8 o'clock. Once in a while, I change it up, but it is totally part of my identity now. It's totally part of who I am. Then you know it's time to bring in another habit or pattern you want to bring in to create consistency around. Then you bring that in the same way. Rinse and repeat over and over and over. Okay? So I want you to share with me an area you want to bring in consistency around. Where are you wanting to bring in consistency? What do you want to start getting better at doing on a regular basis? Because we know the power of consistency. We know that when you create more and more consistency in your life around these certain patterns, around food in your body, the more likely your body, if it's a pattern that works for you and your body, the more likely and the more consistent weight loss you're going to have. Consistent action often creates consistent weight loss. Consistent weight loss creates consistent results. They go hand in hand. But a lot of times it feels boring. A lot of times you all are changing it on yourself and you're creating frustrations, or you're thinking it's boring, or you don't want to do it. Well, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to create the consistency, then I want you to make it more doable for yourself. So, Miss Paula, you said exercise. All right. When we think about being consistent with movement, we've got to start small. What's something you're willing to do to create an exercise, a consistent exercise routine? What are you willing to do? And this is where I look. Are you willing to put on your shoes and go for a walk for 5 minutes? And you're like, oh, yeah, totally. Then it's like, are you willing to put on your shoes and go for a walk for 10 minutes? And you start to find that point that feels very doable, almost easy, in a way that you can start then building that in as a habit. There's one thing about having it be easy, and there's another thing with it being habituated. If it's easy to do and you enjoy it, you will habituate it. But we've got to create the pattern and the habit. And so to be consistent with exercise, we've got to make sure it's doable. 5 minutes out the door, 5-minute jog, 2-minute walk, going out and we start just little. I'll start with people and my clients and I'll be like, okay, are you open and willing to just put on your shoes? Yeah. Okay. Are you open and willing to put on your shoes and then head out to the front door? Yeah. Are you open and willing to put on your shoes and head out to the front door to the sidewalk? Yes. Are you open? And I keep going for 2 minutes, for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes. And you can do the same thing as it gets more and more. As you get good at a 10-minute walk, it can become then a 15-minute walk. And then it could become a 2-minute jog and a 4-minute jog. See, we just start to build, but we start with where you're at with movement. Okay? So that's what I want you to look at. I want you to look at, and I want you to tell me what it is you're willing to do, Paula. What are you open to create, and what are you willing to do? And share with me in the comments. Now, Miss Patty, you said eating between meals. You want to stop eating between meals. So what would be an easy way to stop eating or to start eating a little bit less between meals? Do you see how we start to look at where you're at, which might be you're eating between meals? Now we're going to just want to reduce that. So we're looking at what could you do to start reducing the amount. So it could be something like, instead of having, maybe you have 3 snacks between meals, you're going to go to 2 snacks. Then you're going to go to 1 snack, or you have 1 big snack and you're going to decrease the amount of that snack between meals. And then all of a sudden you start to be consistent with that, then reduce it again and reduce it again. And then all of a sudden you are somebody who no longer eats between meals. And you've got to really want that identity. You've got to know, why is that important to you? Why do you care about that? Who do you want to be? And some of you are just willing and open to just jumping right into, I'm going to stop eating between meals. Now remember, anytime you want to change a habit, we've got to use reward. So how are you going to reward yourself? Going to go 2 days without eating between meals and then start on your calendar, go buy yourself something fun, go celebrate yourself in a non-food way, notice it. Then you're going to go 3 meals or 3 days. Sorry, go 2 days and then 3 days, and you can gamify it. And then one day after 14 days, have a little something between meals, just so that we shake things up and that you can see that you can go in between meals again. Then we're just going to go right back to that old behavior of not having food in between meals. And you're going to just go back and back and back. Okay? So Paula, you said I need to make time for walking, I should say. I need to make time for walking any time of the day. Okay. But here's the thing. When we approach something with needing to do it, it pulls at us in a different way than wanting to do it. Do you feel the difference in your body? I need to make time to walk, or I'm so excited and I want to make time for walking. It's a very different energy and it feels entirely different in our minds and our bodies. So I want to encourage you to look at, what do you want to do? What do you want to do movement-wise? And if you don't want to do anything, stop telling yourself that you want to. Okay? This is really, really important piece, because I don't want any of you saying, I need to, I have to, I must. It's going to force resistance into the process and make consistency much more difficult. So I want to make time to walk. I actually love it. So I want you to look at finding the time to walk, finding the love for it, making it something enjoyable, putting on your earbuds, listening to a podcast, enjoying the process, having a buddy go with you, whatever you want to do to make it enjoyable, fun. And when you say you actually love it, then it's about fitting it in. Okay? Penelope, you said, I have had exercise as my habit, but I tend to try to do too much so I don't stay consistent. Now, instead of trying to do cardio and strength training every day, I'm going to focus only on strength training because that's what I enjoy more. Thank you. Good. Yes. That's exactly. Thank you for encouraging the smaller steps for habits. I live this and feel like you've given me permission to slow down because it will be more consistent and it'll be more fun. Right? You'll have more fun doing it without the force and the push and pushing yourself to do it. So when we look at consistency and we look at why we're not being consistent, oftentimes it's because part of our brain doesn't want to do it. And it's not to say that we always have to have our brain loving everything we do. We don't. But if there's so much resistance that it's not creating the consistency that we want, we have to kind of come back to look at, what do you want and what are you willing to do to create the consistent habit. If you're willing to walk 3 times a week and build that in, then all of a sudden 3 times for 5 minutes can become 3 times for running 5 minutes, and then 3 times or walking 10 minutes or walking 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden it's a habit that you then become a walker. And that's how all of my clients who went from not being in the realm of movement to becoming even athletes did it this way, through love, through joy, through deciding what they and who they wanted to be and finding doable ways to build the habit and to build the consistency and to build the patterns in. So I want you to look at it. You can look at it through movement. You can look at it through your eating. You can look at, what are the patterns that you know work really well? What are the things that you do with food that works really well? And how can you make it doable on a more consistent basis? And then from there, you get to then have this consistency, which then leads to weight loss, which then leads to the identity of, I'm somebody who moves my body 3 days a week, 4 days a week. I'm somebody who only eats meals. I no longer snack. I'm somebody who stops eating at 8 o'clock every night because I don't want to be somebody who eats all through the night. See, when you're clear about who you want to be and we build it up small steps to build in that consistency, then you create that new identity. So I want you to start playing with this and start looking at giving yourself the time to look at where you'd like to be more consistent. Make it sure it's doable. I don't want this being something that's such a stretch that you're not going to do it and then you're going to feel like a failure. No, I want you to feel something that's totally easily doable. Then I want you to practice it for a good 14 days. Now, if you fall off the wagon, no worries. Just come right back. But 14 days, I want you to practice being consistent in that 14 days. And if you fall off the wagon, you're just going to keep coming back. Then you're going to give yourself some wiggle room. Then you're going to give yourself a little exciting dopamine hit of going, ooh, I'm going to change this up a little bit for tonight or today. I'm going to do something a little different. And then go back to the consistent strategy that you love. Just so your brain knows that it's okay to fall off the wagon. It's okay to change things up a little bit because you have this new identity. You're going to get right back to it. Okay? So I want you to start practicing playing with this realm of consistency. It's really important. It's something that I know all of you want more of. Don't make it too hard or too difficult on your brain. Your brain actually loves it. You know why your brain loves consistency? Because when you're consistent and you have created a new behavior and a way of being, it can flip to your unconscious mind and bring in new exciting data inside of your brain. Okay? And if you need any help with any of this, the Thin Within method, it's a 6-week course where I walk you through what I learned from the naturally thin. Not what I did, but what the naturally thin, hundreds of naturally thin people shared with me that they do every single day. And when I started copying them, I started to lose weight. And if you want my help as you're going through the Thin Within method, then you're going to join the inner circle. And next month, or actually this month, oh my goodness, September 1st here, this month in September, we're really going to be hunkering down and I'm going to be doing some very specific trainings on self-sabotage, how to overcome self-sabotage. Any of those behaviors that you're doing, like overeating late at night, binge eating, overeating, giving up, anything that's your self-sabotaging, we're going to really hunker down and focus on it so that you can really get in front of it and start seeing that scale go down in the direction you really want. Okay? So if you haven't taken the Thin Within method, that is the way to go. And then join the inner circle so I can help watch you, pay attention to you, and coach you through this month around self-sabotage. Okay? All right, everybody, get consistent. Get these 14 days down in whatever messy way it shows up. Get your brain continuing to work through the messiness so that you can show up consistently for 14 days. Then wiggle it around a little bit. Change it up a little bit for one night, one day, one change, and then go back to that pattern and habit. All right, everybody, sending you lots of love. Have yourself an amazing day, and I'll talk to all of you soon. Bye.